Hello there. Hey y'all, it's your boy Ashter. I am here with a bit of a different video. Don't worry about it. I'm still working on this isn't suddenly 100% Pokemon channel or anything, nor am I giving up on video essays. This is just a different fun little thing I'm trying out. I'm here with a friend. Would you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. I'm Moonpium, or you can just call me Moo or whatever you feel comfortable with. And I've been a part of the Pokemon anime community for about 4 or 5 years, 5 years now. And here and there, I usually talk about other things on my page. But yeah,
Yeah, you can. Yep, you can find
yeah.
him on Twitter. I'll link it. I'll link it below. Probably can also find it somewhere on the video right now. I'll see what I can do. And yeah, today. So what happened was earlier this weekend, basically last Friday. By the way, we're recording this on Monday, the 17th of April. I almost say May. I almost said May. Anyway, this is the 17th of April, 2023, and the new Pokemon anime just came out with the first 2 episodes, initial two-parter, and I kind of really wanted to talk about it, but I mean, there's just not enough content to make a full, video essay on just yet. And besides, I have other projects on the works. You'll see about that really soon. Don't worry about it. Again, this is not suddenly a podcast channel. This is not suddenly a video essays channel. I mean, this is a video. This isn't suddenly a 100% Pokemon channel. I know my last video was already about Pokemon. Don't worry. Next video will be about something else, something very different from usual, but I'm pretty sure you guys will like it. So stay tuned. Anyway, enough of self-advertisement. So basically, the new series just came out, and I have a few thoughts about it, and I really wanted to talk about it with someone. And since I know you, Moon, you're very much into the Pokemon anime. You're kind of like the first person I thought of. Oh, who should I call to do a podcast conversation like this with? And the first person came to mind was you. And lo and behold, you agreed to come in here. And so, well, let's talk.
Yeah.
So you kind of already mentioned it a bit, but want to talk a little bit about your own personal history with the Pokemon anime specifically, how you got into it, what, anything like that?
So how I got into, I mean, my first exposure to it was from reruns of the anime there and the now and then, from Boomerang, where I usually watch shows like Dexter's Laboratory, the Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home, and stuff. And I usually watch it whenever it was on randomly, and I wasn't really into Pokemon at the time. I had a few friends that were more into it than I was. I just played the games here and there, like X, Y, and stuff, and watched a bit of the anime on Cartoon Network with X and Y when it was still new. And yeah, so aside that, I never really got the appeal of the anime until later on during high school, where I think I watched the Japanese opening of the Sun and Moon anime, and what caught my interest was the art style and the new direction this series was taking compared to previous series, where this time Ash is going to school and exploring the 4 island trials, where he gets the 4 badges. I think that's what they were called at Alola. And yeah, it was pretty much different from the structure of previous older entries, and I wanted to give this new series a chance, and I watched a few episodes, and I was hooked from there, and I started to binge watch the series. And then later on, around the Alola League, I guess, I started to go back to watching the older series, and then been a huge fan of been a fan ever since.
It's funny. My story is somehow very similar, but also very different. Differently from you, I wasn't indifferent. Before I was like 8 or 9, I used to legitimately not like Pokemon, like actively dislike Pokemon in general. It's a weird turn of events. But yeah, what happened was back when I was really young. I want to say, I think I was first introduced Pokemon, but maybe when I was I don't know, first literal first exposure to it. I was like maybe 5, I think. Someone like an adult in my household just showed it to me. I wasn't really interested. Before I just looked not kiddie enough, and then I got to a point when I was like maybe 8 or something where it kind of the opposite happened. It kind of felt a little too kiddie, and then it took, because I want to talk about this a little later on. We're gonna get to that, but what changed this was like I watched the video. I was like probably like 9 or something. I was getting into some YouTube channels that talked about some like 90s nostalgia stuff, you know, like old anime, old TV shows and video games.
Yeah.
It's a Brazilian YouTube channel. I don't even need to mention it here. It's not like any of you will be able to watch it. And that channel had a video about Pokemon. About mostly the show, a bit. I think he mentioned a bit about the games. It's been a while, and the guy from that channel, like that channel, it was specifically, you know, about like Gen 1 and like the old anime, original series and stuff. And since I wasn't very familiar with that, and I watched the video and I thought, oh, this looks interesting. And in the video itself, the guy was like, the dude was basically like a Gen 1er. The old one is so much better than the new one and stuff. He said that like multiple times. And since my only exposure to the show was the new series, and for some reason I didn't really like it back then, I decided to give the old one a shot just because, hey, he said that one was good, right? And then I fell in love with it. And there was like this weird period, like a few months into my Pokemon fandom or whatever, where I was like, I was very specifically a Gen 1er, despite being like way too young. Like I was literally like 9 years old or something. But I just watched like pretty much all of the OG series up until like very early Johto, where I think I just kind of fell off. On like through like YouTube uploads and such, back when that was, you know, still possible.
Oh my god, that but with Daily Motion for me.
Yeah. So, and then eventually I just kind of gave in. I realized the newer stuff was good too, and yeah, I got into it pretty much, and then I just became a huge Pokemon fan ever since. There have been periods in my life where I've been more into the games, periods of my life where I've been more into the anime, and periods of my life where I've been more into the adventures manga, which is also pretty dang good. Just it's a bit less well known than the rest, but it's pretty dang good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine differently from you. I would assume because that I'm not as necessarily well versed in like the whole Pokemon anime, you know, universe as you, if you will. Because while I've been watching it since I was like 9. Aside from again original series, maybe up until early Johto, I don't think I ever fully watched any single generation. And I want to fix that. Back when Journeys first started coming out, I got up until episode 50 until I just kind of lost steam. I watched pretty much every league aside from maybe Hoenn. I think I might have not watched yet. And I always watch a few episodes here and there from each season. I know pretty much what happens in each one, and of course, there's like a little bit of attachment to each because like I've been following this show since I was like very young, so I'm fairly familiar with everything. It's just a matter of like, I'll fully admit here, I'm not completely well versed. A season, actually, I kind of want to fix this specifically. A season I really want to watch is the Sun and Moon season because back when that came out, I was a pretentious little 11-year-old, and completely opposite way to you. The art style and like the general vibe actually turned me off. I was one of those guys back in the day because I really enjoy like the final parts of X and Y. That league was fucking phenomenal. But
it was,
and it was a little bit jarring and stuff. And now I hear, and I've watched like the Alola League. I've watched a few episodes here and there. I hear the Sun and Moon series is like amazing. And as a fan of the Sun and Moon games, those are pretty much my favorites in the series. And now it's tied with Scarlet and Violet, actually. I kind of want to fix that and eventually watch through it. But, you know, it's still a work in progress. There's a lot of stuff to watch. There's a lot of stuff to play. And, you know, I'll get to it someday, but at least when it comes to the most recent shows, so like Sun and Moon and Journeys I watched a little bit more of, but I haven't watched all of that either. You'll probably be a little more knowledgeable about it than me, so just be aware. Plus, you're more active into the community, so yeah. Anyway, let me open the list again real quick. So back in like when a little bit after Ash won the. By the way, are we going with the Japanese names or the English?
Oh wait, actually, whatever you prefer, honestly.
I mean, we'll go interchangeably. There's a little bit of like an awkwardness with my pseudonym also being Ash, but I think it's fairly you can discern which one is which based on the context. Back when Ash won the World Championships or the coronation or whatever, in the end of Journeys, maybe like a week later or something, we got an announcement that Ash would be leaving the anime pretty much for good. I mean, as far as being the protagonist goes, anyway. And we got that early teaser of what would become Pokemon Horizons, new show with 2 new protagonists, Liko and Roy. Yeah. And ever since then, we've been getting little drops of information, and we got the short series Messaget Pokemon Master, which I still need to finish too. I watched like 2.5 episodes. I still want to finish. I wanted to binge it before the new show came out. I kind of forgot, but I'd say that one I seriously need to watch because I'm very attached to Ash as a protagonist. I want to see how he goes off. Anyway, so back when that announcement came up, how were you feeling about that? How did you take the news?
Well, at first, when it was first announced, I was shocked and kind of find it very hard to accept since I was so used to Ash going to the next regions. If the current series is over, he will go to the next one and so on. I've been so used to that format. I kind of find it hard to accept that he's finally leaving after 25 years that he has been around the show, and he has impacted a lot of people around the world, fans, and taught us a lot of stuff during our childhoods that we should never give up. We should
Yeah, I get it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You should never give up and like always keep trying and stuff and be determined because that's what he's all about. And so for me, like it was a weird mixed bag of feelings because I very specifically remember around when X and Y ended, I was kind of frustrated about that final battle with Alan. That was a steal, man. Ash he should have won. He should have won. And then again, like the Alola League, that was really good. The fact that he actually won was really good. But like, yeah, the general sentiment, I believe, with a lot of like fans, well, unlike non-fans, like passive fans, people who are aware of Pokemon, maybe people who dropped it after a while and stuff, was that like Ash needed to, finally progress and like grow, and like it's been 25 years. Like he's still like a 10-year-old kid, and it works in the context of the show. And now that he's gone, like it definitely hurts. I'm gonna get to that in a sec, but like I do remember like the general sentiment being that like, oh, maybe I should leave the anime. I remember very specifically wanting them to adapt the manga instead because I was really into the manga back in like 2016, 2017, I believe. I remember like, oh, maybe after Sun and Moon they could just finish here and then just adapt the manga. They'll never do that. That manga is too dark for it's too dang dark for all ages television. It's a shonen show. It's a shonen manga, I guess. It would be like a shonen show rather than like, the target audience for the Pokemon anime, which tends to skew a little younger. But yeah, I do remember very specifically like wanting that. Like, maybe they should just retire Ash. But when it happened, when it finally actually happened, it hit me like actually really, really hard. Back when it happened, like I started like remembering how much like as much as like again I wasn't always actively watching the show like all the time. There would be periods of my life where I would, keep up with it and then forget to keep up with it and then like just watch some random episodes here and there. But it's always been like there. And ever since I was basically like 8, 9 years old when I first started watching the show, he's been there. And like we've seen him grow through these 25 years. We've seen him and like everyone else around him grow so much. It starts being more of a character thing, like just it starts being more like oh he's going away, that's sad, but more like this guy's almost like a childhood friend, to me. I was like, is he really going away? Like, because it feels like a part of like the audience or the show is like going away with it, and like Mike is like a person, like a character, I know, but like someone who could basically be a person along with all of his friends would just go away from my life like pretty much forever suddenly, and that hit me really hard. It's adapting to change and stuff, and that's pretty difficult. And as a teenager, I've been getting used to that whole deal, but it came at just the right moment, actually. When it comes to that, like basically, I'm not to elaborate too much on that, but like, yeah, I'm finishing high school this year. Things are gonna change in my life, and this came at the exact moment where, like, basically Ash leaving the anime is more or less like came up at around the same time as my childhood ending. So in a way, it's really poetic, but in another way, it just really hurts. It's really symbolic of like things changing in a way that might be a little difficult, I think. And like, especially when I started remembering, like, man, we saw Brock go from like, he was a gym leader, but he was kind of, just a guy. And then now he's like, basically a doctor. He's a Pokemon breeder. We saw Misty becoming like a really good gym leader. We saw, everyone else from all the other series as well, like Serena becoming a really good. What's the thing she does, like the Pokemon contest and stuff? She's being really good at that, and then coordinator. That's right. And like seeing all of these characters grow over like this excruciatingly long amount of time really made me feel like, oh, it's just never going away. And then suddenly it just went away, and just like that, I felt bad about it, and I realized, oh dang, this is actually not as much of a good thing as we were hoping, huh? And yeah, so it just kind of hit hard. I remember that back at that day, like the day we found out, I went to grab a pizza with my dad, and I just started like expositing about Pokemon to him for like an hour, like directly. I just started talking about it for like an hour and had to listen to me just talk about Pokemon, like making some surface level observations. I at least, like, he's my dad, so he understands. But yeah, I just got really emotional about it, and it was a tad difficult. But when we think about it objectively, like, yeah, it was about time. It had to happen eventually. Yeah, it just has to happen. Like the time came and stuff. The time came and it was about time, I guess. Like it had to happen eventually. We just have to learn to grow and adapt and stuff, and look forward to the new things, because there's definitely things to look forward to after we've watched this first episode of the new series, at least in my opinion. So speaking of the episode itself, it came out again on Saturday. Then it took a little bit. No, Saturday. It came out on Friday, and then took a little bit to actually be subbed and stuff. And so, how and when did you watch it? How did you manage to Well, we're not necessarily talking about the episode itself, but just the experience of watching it for the first time. How was that? How did you manage to get a hold of it and stuff?
Watching the episodes as soon as they came out was when I started watching on Twitch. Was when around, I think the episode where Greninja returned was the first episode I saw live, and I started watching Journey's live onward, and it felt like with the stream chat going on, it feels like a lot of people are watching it with you. It's like especially without the subtitles, I didn't really mind that it didn't have. I mean, like it's just okay. But yeah, I mean, it's being broadcasted in real time, and it's Pokemon is not really a story heavy show, so you can get what's going on with as the episode progresses for the most part. So yeah, I find it a bit easy to watch in Japanese, even if it didn't have subtitles.
Well, as for me, it was actually a pretty funny story. So it's cool that you watched on Twitch. I might start doing that eventually, but I do very much like understanding the dialogue personally. And so, like, I've been watching it, I've pretty much been watching Pokemon, like, not dubbed ever since I found out the subs were a thing. Because, I mean, just real quick side note here, real quick. The dubs are not the best for the show. I mean, more specifically, like the localization and stuff. They changed the music.
With today's standards.
Yeah. It's mostly like, it's like they stuck around with the 4Kids method while everyone else progressed. It's not even like the voice acting itself. I think it's generally like pretty okay, but they don't have the license for the original music a lot of the time, and they tend to, not as much nowadays, but they tend to change some dialogue or change some scenes. It's heavily actually, adapted for the region. It's actually localized, which is not really a thing most anime dubs really do that much nowadays, and it generally leads to a weaker experience. If you ask me, a huge reason why I thought for a while like Pokemon was a little bit too kiddie was like the dialogue in the dubs tends to come off that way. It's especially like more recently, like it's a little bit just kind of like dry and flat a bit, and maybe it's just the fact that I'm reading it off instead of just listening to it, but it tends to sound a little bit less so in the subs in the original versions. Generally, the subs and the dubs aren't really like that much of a good thing. Though I am excited to see what they do with this new show. Maybe they'll change things up. Who knows?
I can see where you're coming from, though. When it comes to the localization of the in particular, is rather weird. When it comes to the music, like they're allowed to keep others, but not like all, on the entirety of the Japanese OST. It might be a licensing issue that they're allowed to do allowed to use their music for some scenes and not others. While in the movies, The Power of Us, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, and Coco onward, they started using more of the Japanese, 100% of the Japanese OST. Some of the Japanese songs were officially sung by English that was originally Japanese.
That's really cool.
Which was pretty rare at the time.
I didn't know about that. Thanks for the information. Maybe they'll change it up for the new show too. It's also really frustrating how they don't, legally, officially release the subs or the original Japanese version anywhere. So, I mean, we pretty much have to say all the seven C's, if you will, to find that. I mean, it's a bit of a legal gray area because it's a different version of the show, but it'd be nice to. I mean, it's not necessarily their target audience. I kind of understand why they do it, since Pokemon is a bit, a separate thing from other anime and stuff. But it would be pretty nice to get simulcast subs in Crunchyroll or something for the original Japanese version or something like that. Because generally speaking, nowadays I am a dub watcher for anime, but Pokemon specifically is a show I just generally don't like watching dubbed for those reasons we just talked about just now. And that's another thing, because the new episode, since there aren't any official subs anywhere, usually I wait for fan subs to come out, and there's some really good people who are kind enough to take their time to do that. The guys over at Some Stuffs do the English subs. But what happened this time was I was really excited for these episodes, and I didn't really want to watch them without subs at all. So I waited all the way through Friday for the new episode, and the Some Stuff subs just wouldn't come out. It came out at 1 a.m. at my time zone, and was already asleep. So and then when it came out, it was just the first episode, because it was kind of a two-parter this time. Just the first part came out, and I watched through that on the Saturday morning. And then right after that, I immediately realized that I speak two languages, and for whatever reason, the Brazilian fan subbers, they were way faster than the guys over at Some Stuffs, and they already had both episodes out by Saturday morning. And so I immediately just downloaded the second episode and subbed in Portuguese and watched that like as soon as I possibly could, because that was a really cool cliffhanger at the end of the first part. So yeah, I actually ended up catching it a bit earlier than most people who wanted to watch it subbed, at least as far as like English speakers go. So yeah, funny story. Thanks, Brazilian subbers. You guys are very quick on your typing, I guess, and translating. So anyway, onwards to the episode itself. So starting off the episode, first part. It starts off with our main character, Liko, and she's going to this new school in the Kanto region. She's from Paldea, by the way. And first, like 15 or so minutes of the episode, or just like mostly a very, I don't even want to say like slice of lifey kind of thing, but it's more like we just get a little kind of like a montage, like small little portions of her life at her school, the first few days, how that goes, her roommate, how she meets that, how she gets her starter Pokemon, Sprigatito. And first off, what did you think about that part of the episode? And what were your first impressions of Liko as a character? What were you thinking as you watched those first few scenes? What were your impressions?
Well, first watching subs, I found Liko to be a pretty relatable character. How she was mostly quiet, and that not a lot of people know what she was thinking, because she was so more, I would say more introverted.
Yeah, I got that feeling too. At first, it was a bit of a shock to me, actually, because back when I first saw the promo images and stuff, I just kind of assumed she would be just like Ash, and as far as personality goes. And as someone who tends to very much like these kinds of characters, there was a little bit of like, oh, all right. And then it really hit me like, oh yeah, Ash is not coming back. This is a new show, new characters. Gotta look at this with a fresh perspective. But
yeah,
I do tend to agree, and I think it's pretty interesting. I'm gonna come back to this as we go on through the episode, because I think it's a very important thing about her character, how she's very non-committal to stuff. She tends to have difficulty making decisions, really. Not necessarily making decisions, but like how she, for example, there's this really early scene on like the bus, she going to school, and then she sees two kids talking about this YouTube show she likes, and she thinks to herself, oh, I like that too, but I don't know if I should go talk to them. And then a little bit later,
that's so relatable.
Actually, same here. I mean, I see myself as mostly more extroverted kind of person and very talkative, but I have social anxiety. I have anxiety in general. I've always had to deal with that, especially in the past. So I can very much feel that, like, that fear of like taking, going to talk to someone, or you don't know, or maybe taking a decision that's a little too drastic, saying no to anything, basically. And that's like a general like through line I see in like her whole character through these two episodes. Basically, her fear of like actually taking a stance on stuff, like actually doing something about like anything, instead of just staying on her own. And like as someone who like at first was like, oh, she's not going to be as relatable to me, because I believe myself to be very much like Ash as a person in like a lot of ways besides just the name. But as soon as I realized that thing about her, like, oh no, I feel that, and that she's relatable in a very different way from Ash, but also relatable in a very different way. And I think that's very interesting, because usually with these kinds of shows, it's pretty, usual. We'd see the overly energetic protagonist who wants to be the very best and stuff. Like, that's a trend Ash pretty much started, and a lot of other shows just followed it. So you would usually expect Pokemon to keep doing the same thing, but I like that they did something different and something interesting. And we're gonna see more of this as we go through the episode. But yeah, I'm glad we agree on that. I can very much feel that. And then it's not very elaborated very well, as far as I could understand it anyway. She kind of just chooses a Pokemon, Sprigatito, isn't it, as like her started Pokemon at school. And at first, it doesn't really like obey her, which I guess is supposed to be a call out to Ash's Pikachu, and how Ash's Pikachu was very much not obedient at first.
Yeah.
but it's almost like in a different way where Sprigatito is basically just a cat, like not just in design. It very much just acts like you would how you would expect a cat, an untamed or whatever cat to act. You know, just we won't really respect our owner or whatever. Like it's just sort of like flees, goes away, scratches her hand. Like it's almost like it's a little like indifferent towards Liko at first. And we kind of see like over the montage, we see them sort of like growing a little more like it's not the same thing with like Ash's Pikachu, where it's like entire first episode it doesn't obey Ash at all, it doesn't respect Ash at all, and then suddenly Ash saves his life, and then like suddenly Pikachu and Ash are just best friends forever. It's a very gradual thing, and it's a little bit more subtle how like they spend some time together, they train, but there's still times where like Sprigatito is like over at some roof out there and Liko doesn't even know, and there's like that one scene when they start like training over like close to, I believe, like some lake, and it's a very beautiful background. By the way, these first two episodes, they have some really beautiful backgrounds. The visual style in general I found to be very, very pleasing. Personally, I think it looks just really good in general. But yeah, the backgrounds specifically were a highlight. And something I noticed early on, I'll see if you agree. Again, don't feel afraid. You can say anything you want here. Like, don't worry about it. If I know I talk too much, so
no, it's fine.
So this is a conversation. Like, let's try to communicate. So again, feel free to disagree or agree or whatever. But during this first part, a thing that really caught my attention, like at first, was like how the tone was really I don't want to say like it wasn't serious per se. It wasn't like mature or whatever. It was still like very much, how we would expect it to be, more or less. But it's definitely not as jokey and like as necessarily lighthearted as like Sun and Moon and Journeys were. They were really focusing on like Liko's character and just showing like different parts of her life at the school and just getting the audience used to her character. There's very little like overly exaggerated expressions or like anything like that, anything that's too over the top. It's very grounded. I feel like this first part of the episode in general is just very grounded. It feels very just normal, like you're just seeing this person's life. No real like pizzazz or anything at first, just very day to day. And I think that works because you're just getting used to the character. It's the first time you're seeing Liko, and I think they do a good job in like making the audience like get used to her character without like much of anything that stands out too much in a negative way. Really, just getting to know her in a very natural, again, day to day sort of way. Agreed? Have anything to say about that?
I can see that. I think this time around, at least for they're just focusing on Liko's character, her life in school, bonding with Sprigatito, and then episode 2, I think it just takes more of a serious tone where we get to see where we introduce the explorers, and then the fight against wanting the pendant, her grandmother's pendant.
Oh yeah, well, and we'll get to that in a second. But speaking of that, actually, so after this whole like 15-20 minutes, not 20, because that would be more like 10-15 minutes. The first majority of the first part is basically just that, and then suddenly, these guys suddenly actually summer vacation, or like what appears to be summer vacation, like a break, school break starts. And Liko, she decides to stay over at school while most of the other students go out to meet their parents and stuff. She just decides to stay in because, Paldea is pretty far away, and their parents are like off doing work and stuff. So it's not like she would, as far as she says anyway, it's not like she would really benefit that much from that. So she just decides to stay over at school. But right as that starts, in the first like night, these guys in cool, like these very well dressed people wearing suits and stuff come into the school and they say they're looking for Liko. They say they have a letter from her grandmother. And here's the thing, like earlier on in like that period where we see her school life, she says she shows like to her roommate this pendant that she has that her grandmother gave to her, and it's basically like she says it's just like good luck charm, but it looks suspiciously suspiciously similar to the stuff we see in like Area Zero from Scarlet and Violet, and all the terrestrialization stuff and the Terra Orb and all that stuff. And of course, as the audience, we have the benefit of not of understanding Chekhov's gun and all that. Basically, we know that's going to be important. There's no way it's just a good luck charm. And guess what? We were right, because just as that school break starts, those guys, they come in and they're looking for her pendant, and they show this letter saying like, oh, your grandmother says she wants the pendant back. Can you give it to us? And immediately Liko realizes there's something wrong here, and she flees to her room and then eventually goes over the window and starts like trying to escape the school because she knows something is off. And like these guys,
like, why would she when she did? I think.
I think I would actually hope there's more elaboration on that later on, because I feel like there's more to like her grandmother and all that stuff that we don't know about just yet. Probably, I would hope so. As a writer, I'd assume there is more stuff to see about that, and we'll be seeing that through over the next few episodes, hopefully. And so as she's trying to escape, she gets she runs into, or it's more like they are looking for her as well. The people from the Volt Tacklers, specifically, what's the name of the guy again? I wrote it here in the notes. Hold up.
The guy with the Charizard, his name is Freed.
Freed, exactly. Yeah, just found it. So Freed shows up, and actually during the part, like in the first part of the episode, we see those guys. They're looking for her. They have been looking for her through the entire school year, and they just didn't manage to figure out who she was. But yeah, suddenly like he finds her, he protects her, and then he fights. There's a really cool fight in that moment where between Freed's Charizard and the bad guy Surledge, and any thoughts about that fight? Because I certainly do have some thoughts. So have anything to say about that in particular?
Well, actually, before the fight, I like how the Volt Tacklers how this episode built up the Volt Tacklers, where during Anne and Liko's conversation about Sprigatito, you first see the Volt Tacklers at their ship. Then it builds up to them going looking for Liko around the school, and then which will lead to the fight against Freed and Amethio, which I think it was done really well throughout, and the fight was really good. The fight was great. The animation was great.
Yeah, the animation was really good.
Yeah.
The tone suddenly, like the first part of the episode was very much grounded. It wasn't really comedic, but it wasn't really serious either. Again, just very grounded. And then suddenly things go nuts, and just things get very serious very fast, or at least like for Pokemon standards. And they start fighting. And I like how, like, again, the background is freaking amazing. It's beautiful. I love how like the night sky and how the light reflects on the characters. I think there's a little bit more detail on that in comparison to, especially Sun and Moon, but also like Journeys. They tend to use like very flat colors. And while I can definitely see like this show's art style is still like evolving from Journeys and Sun and Moon's look, I can definitely see there's a little more of a focus on like shading and like how the lighting of the area around them, the characters, tends to affect the characters themselves. At least for these fights, I kind of noticed that a little bit. And in general, just made for a very stunning fight. I just gotta mention though, as a competitive Pokemon player, it bothers me that Surledge was affected by a fire type move when that shouldn't be possible, theoretically speaking, because of its ability. But details, it's the anime. Hello, this is Ash from the future making a small correction here. Because it didn't cross my mind that this Star Edge could be running weak armor instead of flash fire. Yeah, that would mean it would be able to be hit by fire type moves. So I guess I was wrong there. Anyway. I just really had to mention that. And then like right at the end of the first part, Liko tries to like jump between two buildings to escape. And then she's like about to fall, and then like the Star Edge sort of like attacks her directly with like a projectile. And she's about to get hit when her pendant like it glows and it creates this shield around her. And like what is meeting that shield? A Pokemon shows up, a completely new Pokemon shows up and protects her from it, and that's how the first episode ends. That's the first cliffhanger. So yeah, that Pokemon, it's not in any Pokédex in the games. It's not, at least so far, it's not in Scarlet and Violet. We've never seen it anywhere before. It looks, however, it does look suspiciously similar to Terrapagos. Terrapagos, whatever.
I think it's hinting to its pre-evolution before it goes to that.
Yeah, or something to that effect, which is cool. I really like it when the anime teases Pokemon before they actually show up in the games. Something that's slightly frustrating to me. That's a very personal thing. I remember when Terrapagos was first, or Terrapagos, whatever, was first like announced. People realized the Paldea region was suspiciously shaped and very similarly to Terrapagos. And as a Bionicle fan, as a Xenoblade Chronicles fan, as an Owl House fan, I love those kinds of plot twists where like, oh, suddenly, guess what? The structure you're standing on is actually a living thing, a giant living thing, and you're all on top of it. So I was kind of hoping they would go for that. I remember people were speculating about that when Terrapagos was first announced, because you can kind of see, like, if you look at Paldea, you can kind of see like the little head and like the circular shape. It kind of looks a little bit like it. And since, you know, like Area Zero is like already like all those crystals, like those hexagons and stuff, it looks like Terrapagos in many ways. There was this theory going on, and I was kind of hoping it was real. And there's still a chance it is. There's still a chance it is. That would be a killer plot twist. But if this really is the pre-evolution of Terrapagos, then it kind of throws that off, because that would imply it grows in size to like an unreasonable degree when it evolves or changes form or whatever, which just doesn't seem very likely. So yeah, I mean, a man can still dream, but I'm still a little bit sad about it. Anyway, as you know, the episode ends there, and again, the whole thing with me wanting to know what happens next happened, and I immediately looked for the Brazilian sub version. So the second part I watched with Portuguese subs and like Brazilian Portuguese subs. You know, that will be relevant in a second, but so far just keep that in mind. And then I immediately watched through that. And the second episode I also really enjoy, but I also feel like there's less things to talk about. Basically, like we said, it goes a little bit more into, you know, like a serious vibe tone. It like things are happening. There's an actual threat going on, and I really like that personally. In general, I'll kind of elaborate that more a bit, and like when we get closer to the end in the conclusion. But the vibe I'm getting from this show so far is this is a cool anime. Period. And this is not to like disregard all the other seasons, all the other series of Pokemon, because I very much like enjoyed them as a Pokemon fan, someone who's been a fan since like a fairly young age. But especially like again with the Sun and Moon and Journeys, and I mean Sun and Moon, I feel like they delivered that a little bit better because people love the characters in the Sun and Moon show. I feel like they, from what I could gather from the reactions and stuff, people really loved that season in particular. Journeys, kind of, it seems like not as much, but it's
a very mixed series.
Yeah. But especially like with Journeys, which I watched a lot more of, what I could like sometimes what would happen is like, yeah, I'm enjoying. It's a fun show. I'm having fun, but like it's also that feeling where like it's the show is constantly like, I don't want to say talking down to me, but like this is clearly made for, you know, young Japanese kids who have a different sense of humor than me and who, you know, are less receptive to, you know, more serious stuff than me. I'm not asking for Pokemon to be mature or whatever. That's really stupid. That's a really stupid thing to want. And like in general, like this even extends to other seasons. It's not a jab at Cinnamon Journeys, by the way, because the other seasons, they as much as like X and Y tried to be like cool and edgy, and it succeeded in like a lot of ways. It still got a little bit of that where like, you know, it's a kids show. You kind of like, at least to me, like I kind of sometimes have to like adapt my mindset. Like, oh, okay, I will not expect anything too nuanced or mind-blowing for this. I'm here to have some fun and enjoy these characters I like, for the most part. And what really hit me, like, and this is something I realized when I tried to like share the show with friends of mine who don't particularly like Pokemon, but maybe like anime in general. Pokemon's just not a very easy show to recommend to like, you know, shonen fans and stuff. Like, oh, you should really watch the Pokemon show. They're gonna look at you weird. And then you show them a random episode, like, okay, what's the point? This was very episodic. It was very, again, it's ultimately it's still like a somewhat, you know, a good kiddie show, not old, very kiddie, not like. It's not like it's still very fun, but it's ultimately like you can feel how it's like maybe sort of held back by that. And something I felt with these first two episodes of Horizons, the new show, was that like, man, I could recommend this as just a good show, like a good anime to like anybody. Also because it's not over 1,000 episodes long and it's still just starting out. But also like I could genuinely recommend this to some friends of mine who like aren't into Pokemon. Just say, this is a good show, you should watch it. And they would probably, I have a feeling they would probably enjoy it. I wasn't looking at this and thinking, this is good for Pokemon. I was just thinking, this is a good freaking anime. It's good. I don't feel like I'm being talked down to. I don't feel like I'm not the target audience or anything. I'm just enjoying it. Period. No like asterisk, no strings attached, no nothing like that. Because usually I love all the stuff with Ash, really do, genuinely. But there's always this thing in the back of my head, and that thing in the back of my head really wasn't present at all when Horizons, at least so far. I just felt like I was watching a new cool anime that happened to be Pokemon, you know, that happened to be Pokemon related, happened to be, you know, a part of the Pokemon franchise as a whole, despite still not being like as like edgy as like the manga, for example. It just felt very like good, period. Nothing else to it. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but that's just the impression I got from it. And I'm gonna elaborate this as we go on to like the following parts of this episode. But first I gotta ask, do you see where I'm coming from, or am I just saying crazy stuff?
Well, I can see I can see where you're coming from with Horizons being more to uh, being
Take your
handled
time,
to
don't worry.
I think to a kind of a bit of an older audience, I guess, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
While still having a lighthearted tone that the Pokemon anime is known for, while having some dark themes here and there, but not too much to be overshadowed to the lighthearted themes. Well, dialogue wise, I think that being talked down upon to a certain level to an age group. I think that's more of a English dub thing. With like the TPCI dub specifically, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where um that that it usually happens there.
Yeah, it happens
It's been a
it
while since
happens a lot there. Very much,
yeah,
yeah.
it's been a while since I've watched the 4 Kids dub, so I can't really have an opinion on how they
Less
handled their
so,
dialogue.
less so, but to some extent, yes, because they were very intentionally targeting kids. But it's also the 4 Kids dub. It just has a lot of heart, and you can feel that in the voice acting. Like it's very genuine despite that. And the TPCI dub just tends to feel a little bit more corporate, like they are afraid of not talking down to the audience. They specifically like need to, and you can like feel the weight on the translators back as they translate the dialogue. Anyway, that's at least how I remember things, because it's also been a while since I've watched both them in general. But yeah.
Yeah, I think a good example that like leads to that was I think this was from the Unova League from Best Wishes, where they cut in the dub where Ash versus Cameron, where they constantly mention High Dragon's name like about it being Cameron's secret weapon, and then they constantly bring up High Dragon's name like, okay, kids are going to know its name once or twice. You don't have to spew it out every few seconds.
Yeah. In general, because I'm 17. I'm no longer a kid, but I was a kid not too long ago, and I remember I did not like feeling like I'm being talked down to. It's not a nice feeling. Most kids at the 9 through 12 age range, which is generally speaking the target audience for Pokemon, more or less, I very much did not like that. That was part of the reason why for a while I didn't like Pokemon as like an 8-9-year-old, because I thought it felt like I was being talked down to a lot in the dub, especially in the dub. And what I got from these new episodes, not necessarily that it's like more mature or darker or anything like that, or even that it's necessarily targeting a more mature audience, but just again, the grounded tone in the beginning and then the more serious stuff over at like the second half, it just feels like it's more approachable by someone who isn't really specifically looking for something more lighthearted. Or again, maybe the dub, it really depends on how the dub handles it, but maybe the dub will handle it in a way. I feel like it's more likely that the dub will not sound like it's talking down to the audience this time around, because of just generally how the dialogue is in the show and the things that are happening. I feel like it's a little bit more difficult to do that, but we'll see when it comes out eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, and speaking of something, since we're already here, we going on with the episode. So okay, the Terapagos looking Pokemon, it disappears, goes back into the pendant, and then Freed takes Liko on his Charizard. He takes her to the Voltacler's huge sort of like airship thingy, kind of like a blimp or something. Very like high tech, sort of like Pokemon has a weird thing of being weirdly sci-fi sometimes, but also not. And this is a good example of that. Or like this weird, cool, like high-tech sort of blimp thingy. And he takes her there. And suddenly we're like introduced to everyone in the crew of the Voltaclers. And we got a better idea of what their whole thing is. And, well, yeah. And then we got, she meets the Pokemon there. She immediately, we can see like, Liko definitely, as much as she's not openly like as loud about it as like Ash, she's still very much passionate about like Pokemon and stuff, especially like cute Pokemon. We can see like she takes care of the Pokemon at the ship when it's being attacked by the explorers, aka like the bad guys in the suits that we saw before. So she's definitely very protective. She definitely cares, and I think that's pretty cool. And also, again, this is where we meet the Voltaclers. And any particular thoughts about them or their giant airship? I'll talk right after you. Don't worry. But if you have anything to say first.
Oh, for one thing, I really like how the Akagi ship, especially the part where a part of it forms into like a Pokemon like battles, like a battle stadium or a stage. That was really cool. The members of the Voltaclers, I would like to see them getting a bit more focus in the future, at least. Yeah.
They'll probably.
But I do find it interesting that they do keep Pokemon in their ship as they travel from their previous journeys to give them a home and just working certain parts of the ship. And also Captain the fact that Free has a Captain dude piloting the ship was cute. I liked it.
It was pretty cool. Captain Pikachu was fun. A weird thing that happened as I was watching it. Not necessarily. The Volt Tacklers. Did you watch? Just a weird question, I know, but like, I'm gonna get to something. Just hear me out real quick. Did you watch the Cyberpunk anime, Cyberpunk Edge Runners? Are you at least like vaguely familiar with?
I've heard of the Cyberpunk anime. I never watched it.
It's a really good show. I recommend it. It's on Netflix and it's really short. So anyway, basically in that show, which is by the way like a very dark adult show. If you're a kid, like a young kid, and you're listening to this, don't watch that show just yet. I know you're not going to listen to me, but maybe don't consider not watching it. It's not a kid show. But that show has a group of mercenaries. We're like just sort of like, and the protagonist, he joins them very early on. That's basically like the plot of the show. And like mercenaries, like they're called edge runners. It's a long story short, like it doesn't matter really. But so, and the Volt Tacklers, they weirdly enough reminded me of them. Reminded me of the characters from Cyberpunk. The weird sort, not weird, the cool sort of like team dynamic where they're like all very different, but also each of them has like a very distinct, cool design, and they have like very different personalities. But you can kind of like you can already sort of feel how they bounce off of each other through the little conversations that they have in the second episode. And I feel like they're going to be a fun crew to stick around with. And then just again, another thing that made me sort of think like, oh, maybe this is just like not necessarily maybe again, this makes me feel like this is not necessarily like this doesn't necessarily feel like the other Pokemon seasons and shows or whatever. It just feels like something a little closer to your average good anime that people would watch seasonally. That's part of the reason why I thought that is because it's very specifically reminded me of Cyberpunk in that aspect, which is a very weird comparison. That's a comparison I never imagined I'd make, but hopefully someone in the audience agrees. It has a fairly similar vibe. These like young adult sort of people just trying to, doing stuff and being cool. Very hard to explain, but just a very similar sort of feel. And immediately, one thing I want to point out, that I forgot to mention earlier, their airship, it's very noticeably CGI. And in any other show, I would be upset. But as someone who likes the battles from X and Y, I'm hoping this means they'll maybe bring back the whole 3D camera from that show in the series, because that would be
that would be pretty dope.
Yeah, and since they're from the looks of it, they're willing to use more 3D backgrounds and stuff. Maybe this is some evidence that maybe it will come back. So we'll see. But yeah,
expecting it to be. At the same time, the ship was kind of be expected to be CGI. It would be kind of a pain to hand drawn the ship every frame. So I kind of see why OLM chose the CGI route.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like most studios would probably do that, but yeah, I can dream. I can dream. Speaking of, because we actually got a fight in this portion of the episode where eventually the explorers, they catch up to the ship, they break the barrier that kind of protects the inside of the ship itself, and then Freed comes back and they go for a rematch, and it's but this time he uses Captain Pikachu instead of Charizard against the Ceruledge, and it was another pretty cool fight that had some pretty sweet animation and stuff. Just generally making these cool monsters look cool, which is, always a good thing in my book. And yeah, something I very specifically remember reading on Twitter, which is part of the reason why I'm always going to be more watch it subbed first kind of guy. Someone mentioning, they forgot that not every Pikachu is as strong as Ash's Pikachu. Even though in the dialogue itself, they specifically, the characters are surprised by how strong Captain Pikachu is. Like, it's a thing. It's intentional. We're going to see more about that probably
they have different
later.
Movesets.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're not the same. I'm not saying they're the same Pikachu, but I'm saying, I read someone who watched it live probably and then didn't read, the subs. They commenting well, how the hell is there? How the hell did they have another absurdly strong Pikachu? but it's like it's a thing. Like they very specifically mentioned in the dialogue that the bad guys are there, like surprised. How the hell do you have such a strong Pikachu? It's intentional. Like it's not the writers forgetting Pikachu is not supposed to be a strong Pokemon. It's very much intentional. We have another busted Pikachu in the show. But yeah. So again, we're walking towards the very end of the episode. There's this kind of intense fight scene. Meanwhile, we got to see, like, as we're running into the fight scene, again, we got a lot of a little bit more of that cool dialogue between the Volt tacklers we were talking about before. We're like, Fried, he's like sort of like commanding everyone in the ship, like, oh, you gotta, you do this, and then you do that, and he's like devising functions, and everyone's kind of like, you can kind of like feel how they're trying their best. It's very hard to explain, but again, it just feels very genuine. It just feels like the characters. They're a team that knows each other for like a good while, and they each know like what they're best at and know how to adapt and are familiar with each other's personalities to like sort of like adapt to that. Like you can see how like Fried is probably like the takes more of like a leader position. Basically that. Like I feel like there's not even that much to elaborate on. It's just that they feel like a very real, genuine sort of like crew. That again reminds me a little bit of the Cyberpunk guys. Where like they're very diverse from each other, but they also have like very strong personalities that play off each other very well. And I hope we can see a little bit more of that. There's this one moment where like, and this is another thing I really like when Pokemon stories recognize that your main character is a child. And because sometimes I think they kind of forget about that. And there's this one moment where like these there's a child on the ship. Let's be careful, guys. And again, that just felt again very real, very like these are a bunch of 20-something people doing something very risky and taking a child along. And you can sort of feel their desperation, and two, how well they work with each other despite that. In the dialogue, it just feels very, very real. Do you agree particularly, or?
Yeah, I got that same kind of vibe when watching the episode. They happen, from the looks of it, they happen for a while, and they know each of their positions on taking piloting the ship, making sure everything functions, making sure the Pokemon are okay, and all that. They do feel like a genuine team, even when the stakes are getting higher. They still manage to get through it together.
Yeah, exactly. It's that sense of camaraderie, I guess, that really pushes through. And just so we can finish off the talking about the episode itself, really, and how it goes. At the very, very end of the episode, so the fight is going on, and then Liko realizes, one, she has no idea of what's happening still. That's also something I find really cool about this this show so far, these first few episodes anyway, how they're keeping stuff secret. Like, a lot we can just infer by, just being an audience who understands how these kinds of stories go. But like in general, there's a mystery with her pendant. We still don't know a lot about the explorers, what their deal is. Why do they want the pendant? Why they're doing what they're doing? Who they are really? Just got a name, and that's pretty much it. And that's pretty much it. And then also with even the Volt tacklers, we just don't really. I mean, there was some promo material that kind of elaborated on them just a little bit. But as far as the show itself goes, we still don't know that much about them, besides the fact that they're probably the good guys because they're in the opening and they're fighting against the very clearly bad guys and protecting Liko and stuff, and just very colorful people. That's something I kind of, it's a very slight criticism, more like a nitpick even. But like as a writer, it kind of bothers me how Liko seems to be very trusting of the Volt tacklers very quickly. I mean, she's still very clearly confused about what's going on. But she has very little information of what's happening. Who's to say, like, they are not the bad guys? Like, we know that as an audience because the explorers, like, they clearly are the bad guys just based on design alone and, like, or preconceived ideas of what an anime bad guy is supposed to look like. And also, we've seen the OP, we know. And then, like, in comparison, we know the Volt Tacklers are the good guys because they have a cool airship and they're, very colorful, cool designs. And again, DOP. Some very slight like nitpick I have with the writing is like how she immediately like is very antagonistic towards the explorers, but seems to be fairly chill with the Volt Tacklers and how like she's immediately like trust them to protect her and stuff. Also, that might just be like heat of the moment things. Like those guys are protecting her. She really doesn't trust those other guys. What I think could maybe help that or like fix that later on is if we get a little more context to her grandmother and what kind of person she was and why she was so adamant that she wouldn't want the pendant back, because she got that immediately as they asked her for it, especially seeing as she is a very like non-committal character. A part of me just feels like she probably under normal circumstances, those are adults that are asking her for a thing. She doesn't even really seem to, she values it, but like, it's just she doesn't even wear it and stuff. Like I don't feel like, generally speaking, from what we could gather from her character, she would necessarily be this against the idea of giving it to the bad guys. I just kind of like bought it because they're clearly the bad guys. Of course, she's not going to give it to them. But unless we learn a little bit more about why Liko values dependence so much, or why she's so sure that her grandma wouldn't want it back, I'm kind of writing that off as a little bit of a stretch as far as like writing goes, just getting the characters where they need to be, because of course you got to do that in a slightly unnatural way. How do you feel about this?
I can. Well, I think she started to trust them just a bit when she was seeing the Pokemon in the ship, like Fui Coco and Rockruff, and I think at one point she said, "Oh, the Pokemon seem pretty happy here. So they must be good." I think she said that somewhere around that point, and then actually, yeah, I do agree. I do agree with the part. I do hope we get to see some kind of backstory on Liko's grandmother and why she wants the pendant back. And
or like maybe she doesn't want. I believe the implication here, the implication is that the grandma doesn't want it back, and Liko immediately recognizes that they're lying.
Oh yeah. You're right.
But yeah. So again, just a very very small nitpick in what is generally a very naturally written episode as far as Pokemon goes, anyway. And then again, right at the end, because, again, she's feeling very conflicted and confused on the whole situation, she just decides to, I guess, sacrifice herself, just kind of like give herself into the bad guys so the fighting can stop and, all this mess can end. And it's like right about to happen when suddenly her Sprigatito does like an insanely strong lift edge and like just blows like a lot of like grass and like Pokemon grass type move energy or whatever across the ship and just like basically pushes the bad guys away. And what happens here is that like basically she was about to give in to her once again her like insecurities and stuff, which is a thing we've been seeing build up throughout the entire episode. This is the point I wanted to get at when I mentioned how she's not very committal, how she's kind of insecure, because I feel like that's the crux of this whole like the at least as far as these two episodes go, it's kind of like the climax of that particular arc, or like the beginning of her changing as far as like that part of her goes, is because she's about to give in to that insecurity. Like she doesn't want to see people fighting. She doesn't want to be a part of this. So let's just like end it already. I don't want it. And then, but then Sprigatito realizes what she really wants, apparently, and fights against the bad guys and protects her from being taken away. And then right after that, they take away Sprigatito instead, and that's how he ended the episode. And that's pretty cool, if you ask me. We ended on a cliffhanger, which is really interesting. Small side note, I actually wanted to ask your opinion on this very specifically because I'm like 75% sure that's just the sub's fault. Like the very specific sub I was watching fault. The dialogue when she realizes, oh, that's because Sprigatito realizes what I truly want, felt very weird. And I don't know if it was the same on like maybe again 75% sure that was a very specific thing to the sub I watched, or something that probably doesn't sound as natural in Japanese. But it's like, of course she knows exactly what Sprigatito was feeling, and she says it in such a like an extended form. Like, I don't know, in the sub, in the Brazilian sub, I don't even remember like the words, like specific wording they used, but it felt like a narrator explaining it to you, and that kind of took me out. That kind of took me out of the experience a little bit. It was like the only moment where I felt back into that, where I felt that whole tendency to be talked down to kind of came back, and I don't know if that's the fault of the show and the writers just trying to rush and explain character arcs in the best way they can within the times they have, or if it was again just a sub thing. How was it in the English sub? I genuinely don't know. Did it catch your attention as well, or did you feel like it was pretty good?
Well, also that the some stuff said that when the scene where Sprigatito was angry at Liko, she said when she is being brought back to her senses, she realized that she was she realized that she was lying to herself, and Sprigatito was the one that like made her realize that. And what I like about that scene was because throughout episode 1, one thing that Liko and Sprigatito have in common is that they do have a hard time getting other people to understand them. So seeing it build up to this moment where Sprigatito understand what Liko was feeling and what she wanted to, what she really wanted to do. So which followed up with Liko standing up to Amethio, and which made the powerful leafage attack, was a great moment.
It was a really good moment, and from a conceptual standpoint, I very much I agree very much with you. And I do believe it. It's specific to the sub I was watching, but at least again in the sub I was watching, that was explained in a very deadpan sort of like narrator sort of explaining what it is sort of way. Like, oh yeah, I guess that's because he knows what I'm lying to myself too. It was like one of those like very long subtitle lines that is just trying to be way too descriptive, and I felt like it was a bit too descriptive for something she was just inferring. But again, probably a sub thing. We'll see how the dub handles it. We'll see. I'll probably watch some stuff sub after this just to make sure. But the dialogue did take me out of it just a little bit, even though from a character writing standpoint, I believe it's really good for what you just say, because that's exactly the moment that she realizes she can stand up for herself. She can take a stand and do decisions and commit to something she feels she's right, instead of just letting the world take her and not really taking hard decisions for her own. And I believe that's like really good. And that's the thing. That's the point I really, really wanted to get to. Because, as much as like, I just sort of like to conclude everything I was talking about before, this doesn't feel the same necessarily as the other seasons. The other seasons, they can be fun, they can be exciting, and I very much love them. And not saying this is necessarily better or worse. We'll have to see as it goes on, because it's still too early to tell, really. But what we got from these 2 episodes was a very genuine character piece, really, about Liko. It was like it's a genuine character exploration. We got to know about her. We saw her issues, and we saw her develop at the very end. It feels very smart. It's genuinely very smart writing. As I finished that, I was genuinely impressed. That's some good character work right there for 2 episodes. Like, gosh darn, that's really good for 2 episodes. That's some really good or really solid character work that I wouldn't really expect from Pokemon specifically. Again, this was a character piece. This is so weird to say from Pokemon specifically. It's not. This felt very. It felt like very smart character writing, like very intentional, smart character writing, where the audience was being taken seriously, and they were allowed to do clever or like genuinely interesting things while still being fun and Pokemon and all that stuff. Because that's my impression. I was I'm genuinely like invested in Liko as a character from just two episodes. That's a really good feat. They really managed to do that very well. The progression of the episode, how it starts off grounded, then it builds up to something a little bit more stressful, but then it climaxes with her deciding to take a stand and like defying the her whole status quo thing and her whole difficulty with, you know, again, committing to stuff and all that. It just felt very like some genuinely smart character writing, very tight, genuine character writing, and that's always something good in my book. And yeah. Any thoughts on that before we close out with some one more thing I want to say, but let's close this on first and then just move on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking for your opinion before we move on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do agree with everything you said. I think these first two episodes was a really strong start. Really strong start for this series. We have seen Liko grown a bit from. And her Strigatito have bonded through them having difficult to understand each other, to them fighting alongside each other and want to take their own decisions instead of letting stuff happen. They take action and what they believe is the right thing to do. And I think that these two episodes executed it really well.
Yeah, and there's even that whole stuff with the moon symbology, like she mentions like she tries to reach out for and like when they're training and it's really far away, but then when she's flying in the Charizard, it's really close, and there's this really cool sort of like symbolism there. I think like it's just some cool imagery, and again, just very kind of like smart feeling writing, like it's trying to say something and it's trying to build characters in a way that's genuinely like interesting, very not just fun, not just cool, but like actually interesting and like investing. And when it ended with like that cliffhanger at the end as well, like it's rare. Like again, I love the other shows, but I mean, Pokemon specifically is always something that I would come back to because I want my weekly dose of fun / and or cool stuff with characters I like. Characters I already like. And so I've never been, I don't think I've ever, at least in the past 5 years or so, I've never been like genuinely engaged by the Pokemon anime in the same way that Horizons made me feel with just these two episodes. Where like I really cannot wait for next week's episode. I want to know what happens. I want to see how she will get back to Sprigatito. I want to know more about all the mysteries that they're building up. I want to know more about the Voltaclers. I want to know where the hell is Roy, because he's in the OP with no. That's, by the way, the next topic, because where the hell is Roy? He was advertised as being the other protagonist for the show. Like they would basically share the spotlight. You know, Liko and Roy would be the two main characters, but he's nowhere to be seen in these first two episodes, and I have no idea how he's going to be introduced. Why? Why did they take this route? And in the end, what seems to me is like Liko really is just the main character, period. And then they try to push Roy alongside her, maybe because she's a girl, and, you know, there's, you know, advertisement things with that, since Pokemon is more so a franchise targeted at boys than it is targeted at girls. Maybe there was like a bit of like a pressure from, you know, the marketing department to put Roy alongside her to make it seem like he's just as important as her. Either that, or we're gonna get some episodes just about Roy very soon, so we get like maybe a similar amount. But what seems like it's going to happen is more like Liko is going to be the actual main character, whereas Roy is just going to sort of like be there. Maybe he's going to have a few episodes for him, sort of like an Ash and Go situation, really. Ash is still the main character, but there's this other sort of like not as main, but still kind of main character with Roy, because again, he's literally not in the first two episodes, and it doesn't seem like he's going to show up in the next ones. What's going on?
Well, I think they're gonna give Roy his own two-parter. Introduce his character, the new Pokeball that he has, mysterious Pokeball has. I would like to know where he got it from, or it could be from someone from his family, or just found it somewhere, or what led his goal to trying to find the shiny Rayquaza. But I think we'll get a two-parter or an episode dedicated to Roy after episode the next week's episode.
Most likely, yeah.
I and then he'll eventually join the Explorers like we've seen from the opening at the end. And other than that,
Volt
yeah,
tacklers, I mean, the explorers are the bad guys.
yeah, oh yeah, I mean, I
Don't
thought
worry.
Volt Tacklers.
It's a weird
Oh my
wording.
god.
It's a weird wording. Usually when you
Oh
think
my
explorers, you think good guys, but for some reason,
Oh my god. Yeah, the Volt Tacklers is like just like in the opening.
yeah, yeah. hmm
But
but oh yeah, say it.
I don't know. I was just gonna finish it off like and I think that's it for a bit, and then they'll just work together.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes on eventually. But just I know, it just seems kind of iffy how they're not iffy, but just kind of suspicious how he's just not there in these first few episodes. Liko really seems to be the main character, at least so far. We'll see how this goes. So to close off, what are your expectations for the rest of the show as it goes on? What direction do you want it to take? What things do you want to see? This besides what we already talked about here. Anything in particular you want to see built upon or introduced?
Well, I do want man.
Oh, I can go ahead first if you don't know what to say.
Yeah, you can go.
So personally, what I would personally like to see more of is this again, not necessarily more mature, but this more nuanced investing writing from the show as it goes on. Because so far, like, we ended on a cliffhanger and we got some really tight character work. I hope they keep it up. I don't mind episodic stories, but I do want those stories not to feel too inconsequential or too, forgettable. I want them to build on the mysteries that they're setting up with what seems to be Terapagos, and then, like Liko's pendant, and then again, Roy's Pokeball, that's all weird and stuff. I want them to build on those threads. Like, we got to know who the explorers, who they are, what do they want, what's their deal, and just figuring out all that. I hope they sprinkle those plot threads in and manage to keep us engaged as the show goes. My biggest fear, as someone who did enjoy what I've watched of Journeys, I do want to get back to the episodes I didn't watch because it's a fun show. It can sort of fall into being almost too episodic, where not much happens in that show, and it took a while until they did the whole World Championships thing, where it really felt like there was a sense of progression in the story. And I want them to keep a very strong sense of progression going on, despite them going to, again, this seemingly keeping the whole multi-regional structure. This time they're in the airship instead of staying at the lab. I want them to, do more cliffhangers, do more stuff where we don't know what's going on yet, and we need to figure it out. And we got that slowly. We got more, so it can keep us invested as an audience member. Maybe not necessarily the target audience anymore. That's what I would personally want. Just them to keep me engaged with actually, engaging stuff over just trying to being simple and fun. Because those first two episodes really hit me and surprised me in how genuinely engaging they are. And I want them to keep it up as much as possible, within reason, of course, because it's still, a kid's show, and I believe they'll fall back into episodic episodes eventually. But I want them to always, sprinkle in some story stuff, sprinkle in some development stuff, sprinkle in some character work. I want them to keep working on that. Personally, that's what I feel. How about, and then also another thing I want them, please don't focus on Kanto. For the love of Arceus.
Yeah.
For the love of Arceus, please don't focus on Kanto. I was kind of disappointed by Journeys. When they announced Journeys, I was super excited about the concept. We're we're going to all these different regions, but the show was 75% Kanto, and they're staying at the same place at all times. And again, this also leads into the whole episodic feeling that I mentioned that kind of dragged that show down a bit, in my opinion. Like episodic without, that much character structure to build on that to like really sustain that very much. I want them to go, because I was kind of scared when they announced Liko School would be in Kanto, but then I guess she's not really at school anymore. She's gonna stay at the airship probably. So maybe they're not gonna stay at Kanto most of the time, which I hope is the case, because I really do want to see just all sorts of different places. I want to see adventures. I want to see the characters doing cool stuff in cool places, in different places, doing things that build on their character arcs, that build on their relationships, and that build on the overarching story, even if not directly so, just by going to different places and doing different things that are interesting. Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
Well then, so to end it off, any closing thoughts before I finish this video for good?
Actually, yeah, like you said before, I would like to see like Kanto episodes taking place at the Kanto region. I would love to see more Paldea representation, because I think the only Paldea representation we ever gotten as of now was the Team Rocket Explorers thing. So I would love to
Yeah.
see more episodes being focused more on the Paldea region and its location, seeing more Pokemon from that said region. And I wouldn't mind some episodic episodes here and there, but keep it to a bit of a minimum. I would like to see some episodic episodes focused on some of the members of the Explorers, get to know them better.
That's
And
what I fully expect to happen. So my theory, as far as like what's going to happen, is like, okay, we're gonna get this following episode where Liko tries to save Sprigatito. She probably succeeds, most likely.
yeah,
And then we're gonna meet Roy, and then I believe we're gonna get like some 5 or so episodes, each of which is gonna focus on one of the members of the Voltaclers. And then right after that, I would hope we would get into some more story stuff after that. Again, I do agree. We need to. It's nice to sprinkle in some episodic stuff, but I really do hope they focus a little bit more on that genuine, like story progression, because I'm really intrigued by it. I don't want them to just sit on it for like 40 episodes, keep us hanging, and slowly making me lose interest.
yeah, I would love to see this series being more story driven compared to previous entries. I would think it would be a good step in direction into its future.
Guess that's not even a thing because I guess the biggest counter argument to that is that, oh, it's a kids show. They have to keep it, episodic and stuff. But we have seen not only, I mean, of course, there's lots of Western cartoons that do that already. But then like even kids animes, like even like direct competitors to Pokemon. So I'm a fairly, big fan of both like Digimon and Beyblade, and both of those seem to work out and depending on the season, of course, it really depends, but both of those seem to work out fairly nice balance. Even like Yu-Gi-Oh as well, even though Yu-Gi-Oh kind of skews a little older, but like work at still have like a sort of a more story driven format while still being able to advertise the thing that they're meant to advertise for kids and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would hope that's more or less the direction they want to take, something a little more Digimon-y, if you will, just focus more on the characters, focus more on the story. I don't know if you're at all familiar with, any season of Digimon, but especially the first one is very much like that. It was like, it's character driven, it's story driven, it's really going to dig deep into the character's emotion, and it's good. And it progresses, and I kind of want them to more or less do more or less the same thing, maybe a slight bit more of episodic episodes, because that just fits Pokemon Stone just a bit better. I do wish they would skew more towards something closer to Digimon personally. Anyway, so I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this. Genuinely, thank you so much for doing this with me. I was able to get so much out of my head just from talking through all of this with you. It was super fun to me. I don't know if you enjoyed it as much as me, but I definitely enjoyed this a lot. And and yeah, let's hope I'll manage to edit this until before the next episode releases. And thank all of you at home on YouTube for listening through to us ramble about Pokemon for so long. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for being here. Do you want to say goodbye to the audience?
Oh, I should be thanking you for having me here. It was great. It was fun talking to you about the first two episodes, the characters, what direction they're gonna take, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm hoping all the best for Horizon's future.
Same
Thank you
here.
guys for watching. Subscribe to Astra's channel.
Yeah, I would be very thankful for that. And so yeah, like, subscribe and stuff, and thanks for listening. Bye bye everyone. Have an amazing day. And go
Bye
outside.
bye.
Do touch some grass, have fun. You've been listening for podcasts for too long. Go do something. I promise it's worth it. Bye bye.